Good day and welcome back to another World of Warcraft video. In this video we're going to talk about gearing and everything you need to know about gearing in World of Warcraft. Now, obtaining gear is super simple in World of Warcraft. You get it from pretty much everything. Looting mobs, looting caches of infinite treasure from quests, obtaining treasure chests, flying through bronze orbs, completing dungeons, scenarios, raids. All of these will drop gear. Getting the gear is not the hardest part, as you'll get plenty of pieces of gear quite frequently. It's deciding on what you want to keep and how you want to upgrade it. Now, an important part in this process of upgrading your gear, and your gear eventually, is going to be obtaining bronze. Now, obtaining bronze is pretty much exactly the same way as obtaining gear. Bronze, essentially, you get from everything. Mobs, quest rewards, etc. Treasures, rares, pretty much all the same. Now, bronze scales up with the upgrades you want to do. So upgrades will start out cheaper, and then they will become progressively more expensive as you increase an item level. But bronze itself will drop at an increasing rate. So don't get scared when you see upgrade bronze is going to be like 15,000, 18,000, 30,000. Your amounts of bronze is going to scale with the content that you do, the level that you are, etc. So don't panic too much. Another thing, don't use your bronze early on either. Bronze is something that's way more valuable being used for obtaining rewards like mounts and treasures rather than spending it on upgrading your gear. Like I said, you're going to be replacing your gear or getting a lot of gear pretty easily, so don't feel the need to constantly upgrade certain pieces. Now, in Pandaria Remix, there's important things to understand. So firstly, all gear is created the same. The stats are not the same based on the rarity, and the distribution, like items can still roll different stats, but certain things remain the same. For example, your helmet will always spawn a meta gem socket. Your feet will always spawn a cogwheel socket. Shoulders, belts, wrist, and hands will all spawn tinker sockets. Chest and legs will spawn prismatic sockets, and neck, rings, trinkets will all spawn prismatic sockets. All items can scale up to 3 sockets. Upgrading your gear, if you choose to do so, will spawn the additional sockets. So don't worry about upgrading a lower level piece and it doesn't spawn a socket. The important things that will roll with different gear is stats. So your stat distribution that you want in your character is going to be important. If you find a piece with good stats, you may want to consider upgrading it. And secondly as well, the other thing that will roll is rarity. Rarity still affects ultimately the overall number of stats that an item will give to you. And we'll talk about that a little bit more just now. Now, upgrading your gear is pretty simple. Honestly speaking, it's not something that's too difficult to understand. Green gear can be upgraded 36 times, whereas blue and epic gear can be upgraded 34 times. All gear goes to a maximum level of 556. In the beginning of the game, your gear upgrading is gated based on your overall level. So you won't be able to upgrade gear to a certain item level until you reach a level. The gear itself, once you hit 19 out of 34, which is level 70, you then have to upgrade all your gear at the same time, each piece, before you can go to the next level. So before you're able to, you can't just upgrade one piece all the way to 556. That's to stop people kind of mass upgrading weapons as big sources of damage. Instead, you have to upgrade every single piece of item to the same level before you can upgrade the next ones. Now, rarity affects upgrading. Okay, firstly, it affects upgrading in terms of the stats. This is very, very important to understand. I have here a pair of blue bindings. You can see if I want to upgrade these blue bindings to max level, which is 556, we'll take a look here. You can see it's going to cost me 44,000 in bronze, and it's going to give me 761 armor, but I'm going to get more substats. Now if I switch to a green pair of gauntlets, I'm getting the same armor, it's 3,000 cheaper, but I'm getting less substats. So rarity still affects the overall composition, but it won't affect the number of sockets. So just keep that in mind. So you don't want to upgrade non-rare items It will be more expensive, but especially if you have a rare item with good stat distribution, chances are you probably want to roll that one more so than anything else. Now, scrapping gear is pretty simple. You can go to any of these little sandstorm portals and scrap your gear. You can also scrap gems that you don't need. By scrapping gear and scrapping gems, you get bronze back. Very simple system. If you're not near a vendor, you have a little spell that was given to you, which you can use to scrap gear again. So once again, very simple system. One thing I will say from my side, scrapping gear is pretty straightforward, and you can scrap any gems that aren't meta stats for your character. You know, intellect gems aren't going to be very useful on your rogue. Now let's talk trinkets and rings, because this is going to be a section where people are going to be very confused. Firstly, trinkets and rings are directly tied to achievements. You cannot just get them. They don't drop from mobs or quest rewards or dungeons. They only spawn from completing certain achievements. These achievements are not account-wide either, so if you want to do multiple ults and get trinkets and rings on them, you're going to have to obviously play with them and achieve the achievements again. You can find the achievements under the Remix Pandaria section, and here basically it'll give you a list of what you need to achieve. Now, some of them aren't too bad. For example, the Time Runner's Idol, which is a trinket, is rewarded from reaching level 70 with your character. Some are more complex, like completing all Pandarian dungeons on heroic difficulty, or completing all raid scenarios on normal difficulty for your neck, which is probably the hardest. The trinkets and the rings and the gems are all very, very, very good, as they provide a lot of prismatic sockets, which are where you're going to get a ton of secondary stats. So there's a reason why they're kind of locked behind an achievement. They're not too intrinsically hard to get. I mean, things like all dungeons done on heroic is not super hard, but it's there. Once you've done the achievement, you can just go to the vendor, Linda Moratu, in the Time Bazaar, and you'll be able to buy it for 10 bronze. So very, very straightforward. Now, the only other things really to consider are some tips and tricks. Now, gearing is pretty important, but early on, please don't spend your bronze. Like I said, it's kind of a waste of money to spend your bronze, and you could pick up some cool mounts rather, or get closer to a mount that you want. Early on, using things like your scrolls and your consumables that you get tons of is going to help you out a lot more. These last for an hour at a time. You get tons of them. Some are 30 minutes, and they give you percentage-based boosts, which is always helpful. It's the same with gems. A lot of these are going to matter a lot more early on. Things like mechanical gems and tinkering gems are going to be way more important. If you are looking to upgrade something, only look at upgrading your weapons. Especially if you're a DPS character, upgrading your weapons is going to give you more damage, which directly will allow you to finish quests faster. That's it. That is gearing in the game. Your cloak will upgrade as you just level up. So yeah, there's nothing really else more to say. That's it from me. I hope this has helped you understand how to better gear and how gearing works in Pandaria Remix. Bye.